All right, so we're diving into House of Leaves today. Should you read it?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's had this huge cult following, but the reviews? Wow, talk about divided.
Totally. You've got people calling it a masterpiece, a life-changing experience.
Right, and then others are like, this is pretentious garbage, I hate it every minute.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to break it all down for you.
We've got a whole stack of Goodreads reviews here. Some are wild. Like, one person literally threw the book at their RA because it messed with their sleep so badly.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one. That's intense.
Intense is putting it mildly.
Yeah.
Then you've got Will Wheaton saying the book, like, lives inside him now, and that the reader discovers they live at the end of a 5.5-minute hallway. What does that even mean?
Well, we'll get to that. House of Leaves is definitely not your average read.
Understatement of the year, maybe. So before we get too deep into the weirdness, give us the basics. What's this book actually about?
Okay, so on the surface, it's about this family, the Navidsons, who move into this new house.
Okay, sounds normal enough so far.
But then they discover that the house is, well, bigger on the inside than it is on the outside.
Wait, what? Like, Doctor Who's TARDIS kind of bigger.
Kind of, yeah. There are these extra rooms, hallways that appear out of nowhere, staircases that lead to, well, let's just say things get pretty creepy.
All right, so we've got a creepy house, mysterious dimensions,
Mm-hmm.
and then what? How does this whole Navidson Record thing fit in?
So Will Navidson, the dad, he's a photojournalist. He starts documenting everything that's happening in the house, filming it all, like, obsessively.
Ah, so that's the Navidson Record.
You got it. Except here's the twist. The film doesn't actually exist.
Hold on. The book's about a movie that's not real.
Yep. And it gets even more complicated. We're actually reading the notes of this guy, Johnny Truant, who finds a manuscript written by a blind man named Zampano. And that manuscript, it's an analysis of the Navidson Record.
Okay, my head's spinning. We've got a fake film, a blind guy analyzing it, and some dude's random notes.
Yeah.
How is this even a horror story?
Well, it's not your typical horror. It's more psychological, playing on what we don't see. It builds this atmosphere of dread. Like, there's this one quote from the kids in the book.
Oh yeah, the kids always make things extra creepy.
Right. They're exploring the house and find a staircase where there shouldn't be one. And they say, stairs. We have found stairs.
Okay, yeah. That's simple, but super unsettling in the context of this weird house. Like, you just know those stairs aren't leading somewhere good.
Exactly. Danielewski is a master at that, making the ordinary seem terrifying.
Speaking of terrifying, I've seen tons of comparisons to The Shining in these reviews. Is that accurate?
There are definitely parallels. Both books deal with a house that has a dark, almost evil presence, and how that place affects the people inside it.
Right. Like the house itself is a character almost.
Absolutely. But House of Leaves takes it a step further. It's way more experimental. The way it's written is just as important as the story itself.
That's what's throwing me off, the style. It's all over the place. Footnotes that go on for pages, text printed sideways and backwards. Is this stuff even necessary?
Ah, the footnotes. They're definitely a point of contention.
One reviewer called them pretentious and distracting.
Yeah.
Are they really adding anything to the story, or is Danielewski just showing off?
I can see why people get frustrated, but the footnotes are more than just distractions. They're like these secret passages offering little glimpses into the characters' minds, and they hint at these bigger mysteries.
Okay, so like clues hidden in plain sight. But will I actually figure it all out by the end? Is there a solution to this puzzle box of a book?
That's the thing with House of Leaves. It's not really about finding all the answers. It's more about, like, the journey, immersing yourself in this weird world and just letting it mess with your head a little.
Okay, I kind of get that.
Mm-hmm.
But still, a lot of reviewers are saying the house itself is like a character. What's up with that?
Oh, absolutely. This house on Ash Tree Lane, it's definitely more than just a setting. It's like this living, breathing thing, this labyrinth that just keeps changing.
So are we talking haunted house here, like ghosts and stuff?
It's deeper than that. Some people think it's a metaphor for, like, the human psyche, with all its hidden corners and dark places.
Okay, that's trippy. But I'm still stuck on how some reviewers compare this to the Blair Witch Project. How does a book even do found footage horror?
It's about blurring those lines between what's real and what's not, just like Blair Witch used that shaky camera to make you feel like you were there. House of Leaves uses the way it's written to make you question everything.
Right. Like, you're not sure if you can trust what you're reading, which, knowing this story, is probably the point.
Exactly. And then you mentioned American Horror Story, Roanoke. Interesting connection there, too.
Yeah, that one reviewer brought it up. Any thoughts?
Well, both House of Leaves and Roanoke play with this idea of a house with a dark history. this place where reality itself gets kind of bendy.
Okay, yeah, that tracks. Creepy house, check. Reality breaking down, check. But one thing I don't get is how some people are calling this a love story.
It is, in a way, but a super messed up one.
Go on.
Well, there's the couple, Will and Karen. Their relationship is definitely strained by all the craziness going on in the house. But then you've got Johnny Truant, the guy whose notes we're reading. He becomes obsessed with the manuscript, almost like it's a person.
So it's more like unhealthy obsession than actual love.
Yeah, I'd say so. But then you could even argue the house itself is a character, something that draws people in but also destroys them.
Okay, this is a lot to unpack. Can we back up for a sec? What's the actual plot here? Like, step by step.
All right, so we've got Will Navidson, the photojournalist. He moves into this house with his partner, Karen, and their 2 kids.
Got it. Normal family, creepy house waiting to happen.
Right. And then things start getting weird. They find a hallway that shouldn't exist, this space that seems to defy the laws of physics.
Classic haunted house stuff.
Except Will, being a documentarian, he starts filming everything, trying to understand what's happening. This becomes the Navidson Record, the film that doesn't actually exist.
Right. The fake movie.
But then we have Johnny Truant, who finds this manuscript about the film. He becomes obsessed with it, starts researching the house and the families.
And that's when things go off the rails for him, too.
Exactly. He starts having these hallucinations, questioning his own sanity. The book really blurs the lines between what's happening in the story and what's happening to Johnny as he reads it.
So is this whole thing just a descent into madness?
Kind of. It's exploring how isolation, obsession, all this can mess with your mind. It's a reminder that sometimes the things we're most afraid of are the things we create ourselves.
Deep. And a little terrifying, honestly. But you mentioned Danielewski playing with expectations. One reviewer compared this to Borges, specifically the Library of Babel. Thoughts?
Oh, I love that comparison. Both House of Leaves and the Library of Babel deal with these infinite spaces and how knowledge itself can be overwhelming. They're both playing with metafiction, making you think about how stories are constructed.
So if someone's into Borges, they might dig House of Leaves.
Totally, especially if they like stories that are more about the journey than the destination, and that make you question everything you thought you knew about reality.
Okay, last hurdle. What about people who find all this experimental writing kind of pretentious? Is there anything here for them?
I think even the most skeptical reader has to admire how ambitious this book is. It's pushing the boundaries of what a novel can be. And even if you don't love every page, you'll definitely come away with a new appreciation for the power of storytelling.
All right, I'm almost convinced.
Well,
But before we give our final verdict, there's one more thing. Danielewski's sister, Poe, she's a musician, right?
yes. And she actually made a whole album inspired by House of Leaves. It's called Haunted.
Seriously, an entire album about this book.
It's amazing. Super atmospheric, with lyrics that really capture the book's themes, like isolation, fear, the search for truth. There are even some spoken word parts that use text from the book itself.
Whoa, that's wild. It's like the book is breaking out into the real world.
That's part of what makes House of Leaves so powerful. It's not just a book, it's an experience, something that sticks with you long after you've finished reading.
Okay, bottom line. Should our listener add this to their TBR pile?
If you like a challenge, something that'll really make you think, then absolutely. But go in with an open mind and be prepared to get lost. This book will take you to some strange places.
Well put. All right, before we wrap up this deep dive, what's your final thought-provoking question for our listeners? Something to ponder as they decide whether to brave House of Leaves, or maybe even just as they go about their day.
So we talked about the house being like this metaphor for the human psyche, right?
Right. All those dark corners, hidden spaces.
Well, what about the spaces we're creating online? Think about our social media profiles, all those virtual worlds. Are we building our own digital houses of leaves?
Whoa. That's kind of creepy when you put it like that.
It's like we can get just as lost in those digital spaces as the characters do in the physical house, lose our sense of reality, maybe even our sense of self.
Okay, now I'm really creeped out.
But seriously, I think House of Leaves has something to teach us about all that. It's a reminder to be careful about the spaces we inhabit, both online and offline, how they can shape who we are.
That's deep. So, last call. Should our listeners actually read this book?
If you're up for a challenge, something that'll stick with you, then yeah, definitely. But go in knowing it's going to be weird, it's going to make you think, and it might even mess with your sleep a little.
Solid advice. All right, that wraps up our deep dive into House of Leaves. I'm still processing everything, honestly.
It's one of those books that stays with you long after you've finished it.
For sure. To everyone listening, if you're brave enough to enter the House of Leaves, well, happy reading. And maybe keep a nightlight handy.
Sweet dreams.
And hey, remember, there's always something new to discover, even in the darkest corners of literature, or maybe in your own digital world. Until next time, happy deep diving.